Hello everyone and welcome to our summer series webinar. I hope that you are well and that you're all enjoying your summer so far. I'd just like to start by introducing exactly who we are. So my name's Frankie, I'm a consultant here at the Agency Works and we are the implementation partner of a project management system called Synergist. So not only do we provide a project management system, but we also work very closely with our clients, looking into issues such as over-servicing, no movement in profitability. If agencies are wanting to grow, we also work with them in regards to how we can make that happen. So we do a lot of consultative work alongside of that. So if you have joined any of our summer series that we have previously been putting on, we've got the last one next week, so please do join us for that one as well. Thanks ever so much for everyone that's joined all of them. As mentioned last week, we're going to be focusing on particular topics in each of them. Now, today's topic that I'd like to focus on is actually over-servicing. This is one that comes up very, very often. It's one that a number of the people that have been joining these summer series have asked for a particular webinar to be based around this. So although we are going to be getting things like key performance indicators, how to increase profitability and other things within this particular webinar, I am going to be just focusing mainly on over servicing. So hopefully you can take quite a lot away from it. So this report that's in front of us is actually a food report, which is a group that for like-minded individuals like yourselves who work within agencies, and we put out surveys to find out what key issues are within agencies. Now, this is one of the results from a survey that we put out, find out what is the biggest financial challenge that you face of running your business. Now, as you can see, and this happens year after year, it's always the same result, that over servicing is still the number one financial challenge of an agency. Now, these two come kind of hand in hand, but you can see the second biggest financial challenge is actually increasing profitability. Now, these come very closely hand in hand, as just mentioned, because if you are over servicing within your agency, it's going to be a struggle to increase that profitability. Now, as soon as over servicing is reduced, even just slightly, even if there's a slight improvement on it, hopefully that will actually raise the profitability of your agency. So those kind of go hand in hand, as I'm sure you're all very aware. So we've done a lot of investigating and we've actually come up with 5 main reasons for agencies over servicing. So the first one being inaccurate estimating, the second one being spending too much time on a job. We've also got human error, using a different resource, and the client moving the goalposts. So I'm sure all of you have at some point within your agency had this happen. Some of you probably more regularly than others. Also, some of you may find that things like client moving the goalpost happens all the time, but inaccurate estimating you've got quite a good grip of, or vice versa. So today, the aim is to cover all of these areas. I am going to be using a live system, which I've got set up within Synergist, just to show you some real life examples. It's always nice to look at some visuals. It always makes a lot more sense, obviously, when looking at something live and visual. So hopefully you guys will find that nice and beneficial. So what I want to do is I want to start right at the beginning, okay? So I want to look at getting it right at the initial stages. So one thing that when we work with loads of our clients, the first thing we do is we work out how many hours they actually have available to sell. Okay, so this again goes hand in hand with utilization, and also with the profitability as well. Okay, so it's basically target revenue that you want running through your business, and how you work that out is by working out how many hours we have available to sell, and that's also based on staff utilization. So this here is just a typical example. It could be more granular or it might be a bit more basic. just looking at all of the different resource we have, what utilization targets we have against all of these, and that will also calculate the target revenue per person and also per week on each resource as well. Okay, so giving us a nice total there. Now, what it's also doing, as you can see, is it's giving us a nice total of the number of hours that we have available to sell within the agency. So I'm going to actually show you now a nice visual. Okie dokes. So this here is a typical example of a report that you might pull with this information. Okay, so this is one of the big things for reducing that over servicing is to ensure that we are actually selling those hours in which we have available. So this here, it's saying we have X amount of hours available to sell within the agency. Now you could maybe track this on a monthly, 3 monthly, so quarterly, even a yearly basis. It's entirely up to you. Whether you do it in Excel, whether you're using a different tool, or whether you are using some sort of system, this is really valuable information to track. So if you're tracking it, say, on a quarterly basis, and you can see, right, we've got X amount of hours available, actually, we've only sold Y amount in this particular quarter or this particular month. Now, a really good way to ensure that hours are running through the business is to track things like pipelines. So if you look at the top left-hand side here, you can see we've got things like where we're at with each of our jobs at quote stage, in which case you can say, well, we haven't sold the number of hours in which we have available this quarter. Let's try and see what's in our pipeline. Let's try and get those pushed through. We might have some that actually are really close to being closed. They may have given us, verbal commitment. So let's try and get those pushed through, because one of the issues or one of the reasons for over-servicing is because actually the hours are not being sold as to what is available. So as creatives, they will just get their heads down and they'll work on whatever's in front of them. So if they, which also causes over-servicing on those jobs that they do have in front of them. So if we know that we're selling the number of hours that we have available based on staff utilization rates, then we should, obviously there may still be over-servicing occurring in certain circumstances, which is fine, but as long as we have, a rough guide and that we are putting those hours through, that should definitely reduce over-servicing, okay, because it's going to ensure that they aren't spending too long on projects that they do have in front of them, okay, because it'll mean that they've constantly got new ones coming through. Now, the next area, when we're looking at getting it right at the initial stages that I want to go through, is actually at your estimating stage. So I've got an example here just of a basic estimate. Again, it doesn't matter if you're doing this in Excel, using a tool, or using a project management system. I know we've got a lot of our clients on today's webinar, so obviously this is probably very familiar to you, but this is just a basic example of a job estimate. Okay, so please do excuse the terminology. So within here, one thing that's really, really key for reducing over-servicing is getting it right at this stage. Okay, this is really crucial. So one tip is to actually keep the estimate separate to the quote. Okay, so not have an estimate which is also the quote, but actually separate the two. Your estimate should be an internal budget based on the client's brief. So the client comes to you and says, these are our requirements, this is exactly what we would like you to do for us. This here should be based purely on that, okay? So it's not taking budgets into consideration, it's just internally for your resourcing purposes, and also so you can track things like, well, okay, we should really be achieving, 100% gross profit on this and a 69% net profit on it. Okay, because as you can see, I've got cost and charges associated to each of my resources as well. So it's saying, well, based on their brief, Synergist or Excel or whatever you're using is recommending that we should be charging X amount. Okay, so here I've got 7,380. Now, the next area is your quote. Now, this should always be your external okay, estimate. So you've got your internal, which is a true accurate reflection of what we should be charging, and then your quote can be, okay, so commercially, what should we actually sell this job for? Because what we don't want is we don't want people manipulating the estimate to fit in with a budget. Okay, let's keep that separate. The estimate is the estimate. That is what needs to happen. Okay, the quote is your external client facing. What are we going to sell it for? So if we want to sell it for, say 50 hours rather than 70 hours, that might be fine. But let's keep that in the quote, because actually we need to keep 70 hours in the estimate because that is what we need. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. Just to summarize, estimate is your internal, quote is your external, where any manipulation can be done based on the budget. Okay, so another reason that it's really crucial to get the estimate right in the first place is because the hours in which you've estimated should be then pulled through and pushed out into your studio team. Okay, so this is just, again, a typical example, so you've got nice visuals in front of you, but this here at the bottom we can see are all of our hours in which we've pulled from our estimate. So when a job is, say, moved from, if the client's given the go-ahead, so you've sent a quote out, they've given the go-ahead, what you'd do then is you'd use those estimated hours to give to the resource. Okay, so this will reduce things like human error because they're having the correct number of hours assigned to them, because it's not based on the client's budget, it's based on the client's brief. It may also reduce things like using a different resource. So if you've estimated for a designer, but then you end up using a freelancer, this kind of visual will give you the visibility to say, do we have designers available, or do we need to get a freelancer in? But also, if we're keeping our estimate nice and accurate, we should be able to pull things like capacity plans. So actually, rather than estimating a designer, we can check our capacity plans and say, well, actually, we don't have a designer available, okay, within the particular month that we want this job to be carried out. So rather than going ahead and estimating it against a designer, let's just estimate it against a freelancer, okay? Because we can see from our capacity plans, from our accurate estimating, that that's what's needed. So this, the ways in which this will reduce your over-servicing is it will reduce any too much time being spent on the jobs. It may reduce human error as well, because they've got a clear view of exactly what needs to happen, when it needs to happen, also using a different resource. Okay, so the next bit that I want to come on to, which I'm sure this is probably one of the most popular, is actually the job tracking side of things. Okay, so we've looked at getting it right at those initial stages. The next thing is to actually track if that over-servicing is occurring, why is it occurring. So it's looking into if, this particular job we've over-serviced on, but why have we over-serviced on it? Okay, was it for one of those reasons like human error, or was it the client moving the goalposts? Was it that too much time has been spent on it? Was it because the estimate was inaccurate to begin with? We've also got tips such as ensure that time is recorded and tracked against the job daily. So if time's tracked daily, what you can do is you'd be able to see that, okay, we're say 50% of the way through that job. Let's make sure we are actually 50% of the way through it. So we may be 50% of the way through the hours, but let's make sure we're 50% of the way through that job and we've not actually used 50% of the hours in the first phase. Okay, so that's a real benefit from having time recorded daily. If the client has moved the goalpost and actually more time has been recorded than was estimated, having that visibility may mean that you can actually go back and renegotiate with the client before it goes too far over. You can also start spotting patterns, so you can start saying, this is happening really often with this particular client, or maybe this particular resource. Okay, or it might be happening really often on a particular job type, in which case you can either show the evidence to the client, renegotiate, or just try and reduce that over-servicing in those ways. It may be that you need to set some sort of utilization target for a resource. Okay, if it's a pattern that's spotted on them, or it may be that if it's spotted on a job, you need to go back, reassess that estimate at the original stages, look at some estimate versus actuals against that particular job type. If it's out every time, then maybe just adjust the original estimate. Okay, so then you've got a good chance of not over servicing on that particular job. So just to show you a nice visual, so something like this is really handy for tracking that. So this is a list of just typical live jobs that may be running through an agency. On the right hand side, you can see that we've got thermometer bars which are actually showing us, okay, well, we estimated 100 hours, we are, say, 50% or 60% of the way through those hours. So if we've estimated 100 hours, we recorded 50 against the job, it will show that we're 50% of the way through that budget of hours. This then will allow you to go in and start looking at, are we 50% of the way through the work, or have we used those 50% in the first phase, an example that I used earlier as well. Okay, so having something nice and visual like this, it's almost like the hub of an agency, this. So, you know, in just tracking those jobs that are running through, because if things are wrong at the initial stages, it's going to have a really bad effect on the over servicing that happens in this stage here. So we need to keep track of both of those stages, the initial stages, but also very importantly this stage as well, because you know this is where the over servicing does occur. Obviously it can be reduced by helping things out in the initial stages, but you know this is where it occurs, so we do need to ensure that this is being tracked. Okay, so hopefully you gained some really good tips just from that really brief over servicing summer series that we have completed today. I just want to go over some of the benefits. I'm sure you're all very aware of benefits of following some of those procedures in which I've just gone over. But this will give you greater visibility to make more informed business decisions. So that's on things like clients, on things like job types, and on resource, okay? And whether or not you need freelancers, whether or not an estimate is accurate. If it's not, let's update it. Let's make sure it is accurate. Also, more informed business decisions on things like who are your most profitable clients, who are your least profitable clients. Why is that? Is it because we're over servicing on those non-profitable clients? Well, let's try and stop that over servicing and increase the profitability on them. Okay, I know that sounds very simple, and in reality it's a lot harder, but following some of those tips that I've been through today should, you know, definitely help that. So increasing things like efficiency, and here I've said improved organisation within a business as well. So improved organisation throughout, so like estimating accurately, scheduling hours from the estimate, recording time daily will massively improve organisation, and it will massively reduce over servicing, which should lead to an increase in profitability. Okay. And that will obviously lead to happier staff, happier clients, and happier management. Okay, so thank you ever so much. I'm afraid we have come to the end of our 20 minutes that we have on our summer series. We've got the last one next week, and I think what I'll be doing is I'll actually be summarising all of the topics that I've covered. So last week we looked at key performance indicators. The week before we looked at things like job and client profitability. I think we also looked at new business forecasting as well. So next week I'm going to have a nice overview of all of those areas in which I've covered. I hope that you found this one really useful. If you'd like any more information, or if you'd like a recording, please do just let me know. You can see my details on the screen there. And I hope to speak with all of you very soon. Thanks ever so much, guys, and have a lovely rest of the day.